I saw him before anyone in town did, which is the only advantage of living at the edge of the world. From the ridge above our south pasture, you can see clean down the valley road for 2 miles. And that afternoon, in late September, I was up there checking on a heifer who had decided that fence posts were optional. The aspens along the creek had just started to turn, throwing gold light across the hills like someone had spilled a jar of honey over the whole valley. And I was in no particular hurry to go anywhere. That was when I noticed the rider. He came from the east, which meant he had come through town first, and he sat his horse the way a man sits a chair he has borrowed from someone else. Stiff in all the wrong places. The horse knew it too, tossing its head every few strides like it was trying to shake off bad manners. I leaned on the fence rail and watched him pass below the ridge, heading west toward the Hale place, and I remember thinking one thing very clearly. Whoever he was, he had no business on a horse. I did not think about him until the next morning, when one of our cows decided she had seen enough of the Dawson Ranch and wanted to explore the wider world. Duchess, we called her, though she had done nothing to earn the title. She was a red shorthorn with a streak of pure stubbornness running from her ears to her tail, and she had a gift for finding the one weak spot in any fence line within a quarter-mile. I found her standing on Hale land, calm as Sunday, chewing grass she had no right to chew. The shared fence between our property and theirs ran roughly north to south along the old boundary, and Duchess had pushed through a gap where 2 posts had rotted at the base. I climbed through after her with a rope and a vocabulary my father would not have approved of, and that was when I heard someone behind me. "That your cow?" I turned around, and there he was. The rider from the day before, standing about 30 feet away with his hands in a pair of gloves that still looked new, looking at Duchess and then at me with an expression that fell somewhere between confusion and mild alarm. Up close he was taller than I had guessed, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that had not seen nearly enough weather. The gloves were the kind that had never touched a rope or a saddle horn or anything more demanding than a pen. He looked like he had been assembled from a catalog and shipped west without instructions. "She is," I said. "And this is your land, apparently." "Apparently," he said, and something in the way he repeated the word back to me, like he was trying it on for size, made me look at him a second longer than I meant to. I knew who he was, of course. Word travels in Elkridge the way water travels downhill, fast and into every low place. Mrs. Crane at the general store had been talking about Henry Hale's son for a week, the boy who left for school back east and never came home until now. Emmett, his name was. Emmett Hale. Come back to tend his dying father and a ranch that looked like it had been dying right alongside him. "I will have her out of your grass in a minute," I said, turning back to Duchess and shaking out the rope. "She has a habit of finding the weakest stretch of fence between here and the territory line." "Does she do this often?" Emmett asked. He had not moved, and he was watching me work the rope with the particular attention of someone who has no idea what he is looking at. "Often enough that I have stopped apologizing for it." I got the loop around Duchess, and she gave me a look of deep personal offense, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "She thinks the grass is better on your side. It is not, but you cannot argue with the cow." Emmett almost smiled at that. Not quite, but almost. The corner of his mouth moved and then thought better of it, like smiling was something he was out of practice with. His jaw tightened, but he did not look away. He looked past me toward our place, toward the house and the barn and the pastures that rolled up to the ridge where I had watched him ride in the day before. Then he looked back at me, and I could see him working out who I was the same way I had already worked out who he was. "You are Clara Dawson," he said. It was not a question. "And you are Emmett Hale." I tugged Duchess toward the gap in the fence. "Which makes this cow a trespasser and me an intruder, so I will get us both back where we belong." He stepped to the side to let me pass, and as I led Duchess through the broken fence, he said, "I should fix that." I looked at the 2 rotted posts, then back at him, then at his gloves. "Do you know how?" I asked. I meant it honestly, more honestly than I meant to, but there was an edge in it all the same. His jaw tightened just a fraction. "I'll figure it out," he said. "I'm sure you will." I gave Duchess a pull and started up the slope toward home, and I did not look back. I wanted to, which was precisely why I did not. New gloves. In September. In cattle country. That told me everything I needed to know. My father was on the porch when I brought Duchess in, sitting in the chair he always sat in with a cup of coffee going cold in his hand. Thomas Dawson was not a man who wasted words or motion, and he watched me wrestle Duchess back into the pasture without offering to help, which meant he had something on his mind. "Where did you find her?" he asked when I came up the steps. "Hale's side of the fence. The posts are rotted out down by the south bend again." Something changed in his face. It was quick, and if I had not been looking right at him, I would have missed it entirely. A tightening around the eyes, a stillness in his hands that was not calm, but the opposite of calm. He set the coffee cup down carefully, the way you set something down when your fingers are not steady. "You were on Hale land," he said. "For about 5 minutes, getting our cow back. I did not rob the place." I meant it lightly, but he did not smile. "Did you see anyone?" I hesitated. I could have lied, but lying to my father felt like trying to hide a mountain behind a fence post. He would see around it eventually, and the effort would just make things worse. "Henry Hale's son was there," I said. "Emmett. He just got back from school, I think. He watched me get Duchess. We did not exactly have a conversation." My father stood up from his chair. He was a tall man, broad through the shoulders, and when he stood like that, with his jaw set and his eyes hard, he looked like something the valley had grown out of its own rock. He did not raise his voice. He never did. That was the thing about my father. The quieter he got, the more you knew to pay attention. "You stay on our side of that fence, Clara. I do not care if every cow we own wanders over there. You do not cross that line." "Father, it was just a cow." "It is never just anything with the Hales." He picked up his coffee, looked at it like he had forgotten what it was, and walked inside. The screen door closed behind him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence he would not finish. I stood on the porch and looked west, across our land toward the boundary fence, and the Hale place beyond it. The ranch house over there was smaller than ours, set lower in the valley, and even from this distance you could see the wear on it. Paint that had given up, a barn roof that sagged in the middle like a tired horse. Henry Hale had let it go these last years, and now his son was back trying to hold together something that had been falling apart long before he arrived. My mother would have known what to say about all this. She always did. But my mother had been gone for 6 years now, taken by a fever in the winter of '88, and the things she might have explained were buried with her. My father never talked about the feud, not really. It was just there, like the mountains, like the weather. You did not question it. You worked around it the way you worked around a rock too big to move. But I had seen Emmett Hale's face when he almost smiled, and I had heard the way he said, "apparently," turning my own word around and handing it back like a card in a game I did not know we were playing. He was not what I expected. I had expected surly or rough or hard the way his father was hard. Instead, he had stood there with his useless new gloves and his too long hair and his careful, quiet way of watching, and he had not been any of the things the Hale name was supposed to mean. That evening, I sat on the ridge again, the same spot where I had watched him ride in. The valley was going blue with dusk, the mountains turning that deep purple they wear when the sun drops behind them, and the air had the first real bite of autumn in it. I could smell wood smoke from our chimney and sage from the hills, and that clean, cold smell that meant the season was turning, everything shifting towards something harder and quieter. Across the valley, a lamp came on in the Hale house. Just a small glow, steady and gold, like a word spoken too softly to hear. I watched it for longer than I should have, this tiny point of light in the gathering dark. And I thought about the man inside that house, sitting with a father who would not speak, in rooms full of things left untouched, trying to learn a life that had never been taught to him. I told myself I was just watching the valley. I told myself the lamp did not matter, and the man behind it did not matter, and the way he had said my name, Clara Dawson, like it was something he already knew the weight of, that did not matter either. I told myself a good many things up there on that ridge. The trouble was, I did not believe a single one of them.